911 call sparks. Outrage. Amazing truth about black man. Fixing Wi-Fi revealed. You'll be surprised. Jalen felt a shiver grip his spine as he stood in front of the imposing facade of the Lawson family's home, the morning sun frustratedly reflecting off its immaculate windows. Memories of his father's spirited discussions about perseverance danced in his mind, mingling with the heavy burden of loss. The phone call had come just as he was uneasy in the stillness of returning to his modest neighborhood after years in the IT trenches of demand and innovation. Now, his heart drummed against his chest with every step toward the lavish entrance. Why did he feel like a stranger in a world that was deemed to be better? Once inside, the air stank of judgment, subtly suffocating. He busied himself with the router, while their glances scuttled around him like frightened mice. Their comments felt like a venomous whisper. Can he even fix it? The mother's face tightened with skepticism. Jalen clenched his teeth, forcing back that familiar tide of insecurity. The weight of his father's mistakes, his criminal past, clung to him like an extra layer of clothing in the summer heat. Would he ever shake it off? Defying the stereotype that loomed like a dark cloud over his family, Jalen swore he would rise, but for whom? Zoe was all he could think about, her bright future dimmed by the shadows of their father's history. He hesitated, his hands fidgeting with cords. Why does it always feel like my worth is measured by my skin? A quiet voice in him whispered, and his breath caught as he felt the fierce call for redemption. "Hey, what do you do?" a timid voice asked. He turned to see Ethan, the Lawson's son, a hopeful light in his eyes. Jalen's heart felt a warm flicker, propelled by a glimmer of connection. Was this the bridge over their oppressive divide? They bantered about circuits and code, forging a tentative allegiance that shifted something deep within him. An opportunity to mentor, a chance to project the person he desperately wanted to be beyond crumbling family walls. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Suddenly, the harmony shattered. Voices erupted from the living room where a racial slur had carelessly spilled from an unseen guest, and shockwaves ricocheted through the delicate threads Jalen had just begun to weave. Jalen's heart pounded louder as anger fizzled in his gut. Instead of disgusted faces, though, Ethan's eyes widened, searching. Would he stand by the truth swirling in the air, or would he retreat to the comfortable familiarity of privilege and inaction? The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating the hope that briefly flickered between him and Ethan. Jalen's pulse quickened, not just from the verbal explosion but the impending reckoning this moment was bound to unleash. The family's silence thickened like honey, choking the very air they breathed. He stood, with every ounce of his father's resilience burning in his chest. The legacy of his family's struggle hung precariously, and all it took was a pivotal moment for everything to shift. Could understanding obliterate the barriers of mistrust, or would they continue to define him as just another tech guy, scrabbling in a world wired to view him through a lens of limited perspectives? As Jalen caught Ethan's gaze halfway between uncertainty and resolve, he braced himself. This moment would be one to remember. It was only just beginning. The atmosphere in the Lawson home cracked like ice underfoot as Jalen's mind raced, spinning around the implications of the slur that had hung in the air. This wasn't just a moment to endure. It was a moment to define. He felt a surge of indignation, laced with fear. Would Ethan speak out, or would their bond succumb to the weight of historical prejudice? Jalen peered at Ethan, witnessing the internal struggle etched on his face. "This isn't right," Jalen finally breathed, his voice steeled with courage. It surprised even him how loudly his own heart echoed in those words. The tension remained thick, yet Ethan seemed suspended in thought. Scrutinizing the expressions of his family members, Jalen sensed a wave of impatience rising within him. He was no longer just the tech guy fixing a router. He was confronted by a deeper reality. His existence was an act of defiance against the narrative that had sought to confine him. Then it happened. Ethan blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to resolve. "Yeah, it's not cool," Ethan said slowly, his voice rising just above the murmur of dissent in the room. Jalen felt a flood of relief wash over him, intertwining beautifully with pride, as if they'd shared an unspoken bond, solidified in that instance. But the moment of relief was pierced by the mother's sharp disapproval. "Ethan, watch your mouth," she admonished, her tone slicing through the slight fizz of solidarity. Jalen's stomach twisted, the facade of civility crumbling around them like brittle paper. The realization dawned, heavy and undeniable. This was not just an uncomfortable family gathering, it was an insidious empire upholding its walls of privilege and ignorance. Jalen's body tensed. Did he retreat into silence, allowing their historic patterns to dictate the night's outcome? Or did he press on, risking the very semblance of acceptance he had longed for? That old doubt clawed at him, questioning the worthiness of his voice. But Zoe's face materialized in his mind, bright, unyielding, reminding him of what this battle meant, of who he fought for. "I'm not just here to fix Wi-Fi. I'm here because technology is supposed to elevate us all," he declared, his voice unwavering as he stepped forward. "It doesn't matter who we are. Everyone deserves respect." The silence was a vacuum, pulling at the breaths held within that lavish living room. Ethan's eyes bolted open wide, and for a moment Jalen thought he might sink back into his family's complacency. Yet there was a flicker, the smallest sign of understanding. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "You're right. We need to do better." Jalen felt a swell of hope. Perhaps this wasn't just a confrontation within the Lawson family, but a breakthrough in their collective understanding. Yet that hope was quickly contrasted by the palpable tension, woven tightly between their hesitations and fears. Ethan's mouth opened again, but the words never came. Jalen could see the conflict on his face. Was he prepared to confront his family with the same fervor? Jalen's own heart raced with the need to push, to encourage Ethan to take a stand. The atmosphere was charged, ready to either collapse under the weight of dismissal or transform into a bridge of understanding. "Step up," Jalen urged, not just for Ethan, but for himself. This is the time to stand against what's wrong. Barely breathing, he awaited Ethan's next move, knowing profoundly that they were teetering on a precipice of change. Would he open his mouth and align himself with progress, or would the comfort of ignorance call him back into the fold? Jalen's pulse thumped loudly in his chest. The moment was monumental. Seconds stretched, heavy with anticipation. A snap decision loomed before them, and for Jalen, this was more than just about Wi-Fi. The time had come to face the truth. Could he leverage this moment to redesign his narrative? The uncertainty loomed thick. The outcome was yet unwritten. Ethan's gaze flitted between Jalen and his family, the tension palpable as he wrestled with the weight of expectations, both inherited and self-imposed. Jalen clenched his fists, feeling a sudden urge to shake Ethan into action. The silence suffocated them. It felt like a thick fog closing in, washing out the possibility of clarity. A decision must be made. Jalen noticed how Ethan's brow furrowed, the internal battle raging beneath the surface, and a flicker of empathy surged through him. Though they had known each other for years, it was as if they were only beginning to uncover the layers of each other's experiences. "I'm here for you, man," Jalen breathed, the words chasing away his own uncertainties. "Ethan, come on. One of Ethan's extended family members interjected, a sneer in their voice. "You're not seriously considering defending him, are you? Just how far do you want to take this?" The words acted like a jaw-shattering sound, interrupting whatever spark of support had been lit. Doubt slithered around the room, as familiar as a well-worn shoe. Jalen's eyes locked onto Ethan's, willing him to see past the chaos of familial loyalty and superficial comfort. He needed to believe that they shared more than just a mutual interest in technology. They had a connection that could transcend these boundaries. I just think it's unfair," Ethan stammered, words losing conviction the longer he hesitated. The moment wobbled dangerously on the brink as doubt from his family took root. It was clear he was struggling to put voice to thought, caught between youthful idealism and the powerful pull of familial history. Jalen's heart sank as he sensed Ethan slipping away from him, nudged back towards the comfort of ignorance. "You don't have to agree with what they're saying," Jalen said, a sense of urgency churning within him. "Your voice matters. Don't let it get swallowed up." Surprisingly, Ethan straightened in his seat, the gears finally clicking into place. "You're right, Jalen," he said, the determination in his voice slowly crystallizing. "We need to break away from whatever's been done here. I choose to stand with respect." At that moment, Jalen held onto the flicker of hope now illuminating Ethan's expression. The real battle, however, was yet to come. Would Ethan hold firm in the face of disapproval? Underneath the glitz of the Lawson home, shadows of resistance hovered, threatening to dim the light that had just begun to shine. "I'm not just another voice here. I've got a right to speak up, to say what I believe," Ethan declared, each word resonating with growing strength. But then doubt clouded his countenance. "But what if my family disowns me? What if they cut me off?" Jalen felt that anxiety spiral into his own thoughts. How many times had he worried about social acceptance? Each time he had buried a piece of his identity, afraid of rejection or judgment. Fortified by this moment, he resolved to protect both his own sense of worth and Ethan's burgeoning courage. "You don't have to walk this path alone," he vowed, heart racing. "Together we can redefine what family loyalty should look like." Ethan wrestled with the reality of what he must confront. A crucial realization surfaced. The bonds that held him tethered to insidious patterns were not worth sacrificing his own integrity. He swallowed hard, taking a few deep breaths while Jalen's gaze encouraged him further. As Ethan prepared to face his family, the living room felt charged with anticipation, thick as fog rolling off the sea. Would he embrace this moment fully or retreat into complacency? The energy shifted, casting shadows on the walls, mirroring the gravity of their choices. With poised determination, Ethan opened his mouth, ready for confrontation. But just then, a brash voice interrupted. "This is ridiculous. You're going against your own for what? Some guy fixing your Wi-Fi?" The tension reached a fever pitch. Jalen held his breath, the realization crashing down on him. This was a crossroads. Would Ethan decide to honor his true self, or would he crumble under the weight of his family's expectations? In that moment, Jalen knew clarity would be paramount. The power of choice was at their fingertips, and it was time to embrace the weight of that responsibility. As the truth loomed like an approaching storm, Jalen felt his steps, aligned toward an uncertain path, ready to embrace whatever revelations lay ahead. What truths would emerge from this chaos, and who would emerge on the other side? Ethan's heart thudded in his chest as he processed the mocking words aimed at him. The challenge ignited something deep within, a bubbling defiance rising through the layers of fear that had long silenced him. His family's scorn echoed around him, but he could no longer ignore the veracity of his beliefs. The moment was pivotal. He sensed it in his bones. He was teetering on the precipice between the comfortable past and an ignited future. Is loyalty only about conforming? Or is it about standing for what's right, he thought, feeling Jalen's unwavering gaze keenly. Suddenly, the roots of his family's expectations, the traditions steeped in background and culture, seemed not like protective vines, but rather chains that strangled his growth. The fidgeting amongst family members faded into white noise, stripped of its power as his internal monologue became louder. I know I'm not alone. I have Jalen, and maybe this path isn't so terrifying if I stand for truth. It illuminated him like a beacon in the dark, bolstered by the courage Jalen had gifted him. Listen. Ethan's voice echoed softly at first, but then he pressed on with more conviction. What you all say matters. I understand that. Yet I cannot sit here and ignore what's right. Human dignity should never become a bargaining chip. His family recoiled momentarily, a wave of disbelief washing over faces that he had once assumed understood him. The silence returned, thick and oppressive, yet punctuated by the resolve now swelling in Ethan. Their reaction served only to embolden his spirit further. "What do you mean?" Another relative coughed incredulously, eyebrows arching with skepticism. "Do you really think that's how the world works? You want to get all mushy about feelings? Since when has that changed anything?" A counter-argument sparked within him, burning fiercely against the chill of cynicism. "Emotional responses can fuel change," Ethan countered. "We can't deny the very real impact of discrimination people face every day. Just because it doesn't directly touch our family doesn't mean it's not real." What grew inside him was not just a desire to challenge long-standing ideologies, but a deeper understanding of his responsibility, not just as a family member, but as a human being. Jalen felt the energy shift, sensing the atmosphere now charged with tension. A protective instinct surged, wanting to ensure Ethan remained strong in this moment. In a family of opposing beliefs, this confrontation was no casual chat. It was life-altering. Why do we allow prejudice to shape who we are? Why do we defend systemic injustices against others who deserve our empathy? Ethan's eyes burned with emotion, a fire ignited by both fear and bravery. He recalled the faces of those who had endured similar contempt, people who felt dehumanized, unheard. Jalen took a deep breath, readying himself to step in if needed. The stakes escalated. Would Ethan's family react with anger, or could they embrace a moment of understanding? There it was again, the flicker of doubt threatening to overshadow his newfound strength. "What if I fail?" surged in Ethan's mind, an incessant whisper of uncertainty laced with fear. But with that thought, a different voice pierced through. "What if I succeed?" His family, still caught off guard, exchanged perplexed glances, leaving room for more than just anger. Confusion and contemplation swept the room, perhaps even cracking the fortification of their collective ignorance. "I choose to stand," Ethan declared more firmly, intensity wrapping around every syllable. "I stand for empathy, I stand for understanding. If standing up for what's right means risking our relationship, then so be it." The words hung in the air, challenging and electrifying. Ethan took a step closer, reclaiming space, reclaiming agency. He was not just the young relative caught in a web of familial expectations. He was shedding layers of fear with each stride forward. As the gravity of his stand settled, the atmosphere of the room shifted palpably. He could feel Jalen's presence beside him, grounding yet infused with encouragement. And then, at the very heart of the tension, a voice broke through, one of defiance mingled with a touch of fear. "Ethan, you may not understand how deep these family ties go. Walk away, and we may never see you again." Ethan's breath caught momentarily. The decision weighed heavily in the space between breaths. He wasn't merely standing for a principle. He was inching towards redefining the essence of family itself. Would he embrace a future built on authenticity, or would he retreat, shackled by tradition? The finality of that ultimatum hung there, poised to unravel everything crafted until now, leaving Ethan frozen in contemplation, teetering on the edge of transformation. Would he embrace the turbulence, or step back into obscurity? The answer lay tantalizingly just out of reach. Ethan stood there, engulfed in the weight of his decision, the air thick with unspoken words. Every gaze bore into him, but he felt curiously untethered, a buoy amid the tumult of familial expectations and doubt. As he contemplated the ultimatum cast before him, he became acutely aware that he was no longer the child clinging to the safety of well-worn traditions. His heart raced, not solely from fear, but from the intoxicating whisper of possibility. "What does family truly mean?" he questioned internally, wrestling with the tangled emotions that accompanied blood ties. In that charged silence, it became starkly clear that loyalty, if misaligned with integrity, could transform into mere complicity. "There's something more to me than just what you see," he said, his voice steadier now, "more than just family roles and expectations." Each syllable felt like cutting through fog, slicing away at the nuances of his identity framed by others. "Are you saying this in front of all of us for a moment of clarity, or is this merely a rebellious act of defiance?" a voice quipped, the skepticism mingling with concern. "Maybe it's both," Ethan replied sharply. He could feel the embers of resentment beginning to coalesce within him. The conversations of familial tradition that he'd long ignored now demanded attention, urging him to think critically. "Maybe this isn't just about me. If I backtrack now, I'm complicit in perpetuating the cycle." Lost was the kid too afraid to voice his opinions, replaced by someone who understood the stakes of advocacy. As he confronted his family, the thought fluttered through him. "It's time for my truth to come to light." The tension loomed heavily, shadows of doubt still lurking at the edges. Ethan noticed Jalen standing to the side, fists clenched and jaw set with quiet determination. It comforted him, yet reminded him of the consequences ahead. "I know I risk losing you," he continued, gesturing to the familial presence surrounding him, "but I won't stay silent. This fight isn't just mine. It's for those who can't speak out, for those who fear losing their place in the world." One cousin, Melissa, softened slightly. "Ethan, you can't just throw out everything we've built. It's for our protection. You don't understand the repercussions. And yet, remaining quiet just endorses this suffering to continue," Ethan countered, his resolve crystallizing. "If protecting ourselves means denying others their dignity, then what have we truly built?" Each reply served to strengthen the whirlwind of ideas swirling in his mind. With every pushback from his family, he discovered hidden depths within himself, a capacity for conflict resolution he never knew existed, a tenacity that unfolded with each assertive declaration. He started to grasp that this standing up was not solely about opposing his family, but about finding his voice among them. "Ethan, we're not an enemy. We worry about you," another relative interjected. Their concerns sliced through the undercurrent of agitation, stirring both curiosity and frustration within Ethan. "I can see that," he admitted, a quiet acknowledgement of the generational love entangled into their expectations. "But worry should not equate to bondage. Supporting me doesn't mean disowning our heritage." In a moment of introspection, he realized the values he had always held, compassion and empathy, were now unfurling the possibilities of his future. What if he stepped forward genuinely, navigating the complexities of diverging opinions rather than allowing them to consume him? Ethan took a deep breath, the weight of authenticity settling on his shoulders as he looked around the room. "I have to find my own place in this conversation, even if it means risking everything. Otherwise, what's the point?" The silence that ensued vibrated with potential, each family member grappling with the shift stirring within them. Perhaps new expressions of loyalty were at stake. And then Jalen stepped forward, the solidarity igniting within him as he glared into the anxious eyes of Ethan's family. "You can't ignore the change that's coming. This growth isn't just about being accepted. It's about embracing who he is." With that declaration, a murmur arose among the relatives, the clamoring of hidden fears surfacing. In the maze of strained relationships, understanding could blossom like a wildflower in a concrete jungle. Suddenly, Ethan felt an electrifying surge of determination, a potent blend of fear and hope, propelling him toward a future woven with authenticity. One glance at Jalen confirmed it. The path ahead beckoned with uncertainty, but it was a risk worth taking, a journey custom-made for the discovery of who he might become. Before he could react, a final challenge erupted from the elder, an ultimatum poised to reshape their family dynamics entirely. "Ethan, you really want to put your beliefs above family. You risk losing everything. We could turn our backs on you." The ultimatum crackled in the air like static electricity, forcing Ethan to confront his deepest fears once more. In these dire straits, would he stand tall, or would he allow tradition to dictate his fate? Mired in the complexity of familial love and personal truth, Ethan remained ensnared at that crossroads, necessity and desire intertwining into an all-consuming dilemma. What would he ultimately choose? Was his newfound voice loud enough to reshape his family legacy, or would he fall silent once again, engulfed by expectations? Ethan's breath hitched as the ultimatum hung in the air, palpable and heavy, striking at the core of his resolve. Instinctively, he glanced at the faces surrounding him. Familiar eyes reflecting worry and confusion, mingled with indignation. Each expression carved deeper into the layers of Ethan's burgeoning identity, a reminder of what he was potentially sacrificing. He closed his eyes for a fleeting moment, steadied by Jalen's steadfast presence beside him. "I've spent too long running in circles, navigating expectations instead of embracing who I am," he thought. The realization that his life thus far had been laden with assumptions sparked a fierce rebellion within him. No more. "What even is loyalty if it demands silence?" he dared to articulate aloud, his voice rising above the hesitations swirling in the room. Years of avoiding confrontation sparked vividly in his memory, moments when he had shied away from voicing dissent, preferring the comfort of conformity over the thrilling chaos of authenticity. Melissa, her features tight with concern, interjected, "But Ethan, you have no idea what's at stake. This family, our name, it's all on the line." "It's not just a name for me," he shot back, igniting a fire he didn't know he possessed. "It's about integrity. I didn't choose this path, but I can't obscure who I am any longer." The metaphorical ground beneath him shifted. He was no longer on shaky footing, but instead found himself rooted in a conviction born from deep introspection. He could see the cracks beginning to form in the facade of familial unity. Some relatives turned away, grappling with discomfort, while others listened intently, the stirrings of profound change building beneath the surface. As he spoke, he unearthed a strength he didn't know existed within him, his convictions sharpening into focus, illuminating the shadowy corners of his unresolved discontent. "Ethan, if you push too hard, you might shatter what little unity we have left," another family member chimed in, their caution firm but trembling. The echoes of past gatherings, safe and unchallenged, reverberated in Ethan's mind, tempting him to back down, to retreat into the warmth of acceptance. But the notion of retreat sparked a surge of rebellion. What is unity if it exists at the cost of honesty? I'm not asking for validation. I'm demanding that my authenticity be acknowledged. With each statement, a new layer of self-awareness unfolded. Standing before his family felt like standing before a mirror, where every reflection unraveled the parts of him that had been suppressed for far too long. Jalen's gaze met his, filled with encouragement and assurance. That camaraderie fueled Ethan further, a reminder that he wasn't fighting this battle alone. In their silence lay an unspoken understanding. This was not merely about defying family norms, but a quest for shared truths. His voice, more resolute now, carried a newfound weight. "This doesn't have to dismantle us. Embracing my truth could redefine what family means. Growing isn't an act of rebellion, it's a possibility for all of us. The murmurs among his relatives intensified, a mix of dissent and contemplation weaving through their responses. Each shifting atmosphere fed into Ethan's burgeoning notion of self. Perhaps family was not carved in stone. It could be molded into something more vibrant through honesty. Yet doubt still loomed. Confronting the future felt daunting. He needed to decide whether to stand firm on this path or navigate back to the comfort of silence. Would the conversation lead to liberation or fracturing? He recognized that the heart of the matter would require him to remain steadfast to his authenticity, no matter where the confrontation led. As the silence settled again, thick with anticipation, a glimmer of a shared potential danced in the gaze of each family member. Ethan clenched his fists, channeling every doubt into will. This was not merely about fighting for his truth, it was about igniting a conversation that had long been dormant in the corners of their legacy. What chapter would his refusal to remain silent open? He could sense the possibility of collective awakening stirring within their ranks, even as his own heart pounded with uncertainty. Then came the elder's voice, low but laced with urgency. Maybe then it's time you learned the real consequences of speaking your truth. The weight of that statement reverberated within Ethan, each word turning the tension into a tight coil of anticipation. The moment of confrontation had arrived. What revelation lay ahead as his family prepared to unveil the history that shaped their traditions? Ethan sensed his heart rate quickening as the gravity of the elder's words settled around him like a thick fog. The room felt charged, as though every eye was not just scrutinizing him, but probing the very essence of his soul, searching for the cracks in his resolve. The air buzzed with tension, a byproduct of emotions that had long been bottled up. Consequences, he echoed softly, his mind racing through the possible implications of defying his family's legacy. He had always been the dutiful son, the compliant nephew. Now, daring to poke holes in the family narrative felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Still, a steely determination took root in him. The fear of reprisal, while palpable, was nothing compared to the fear of further suppressing his identity. He took a small step forward, grounding himself with the weight of truth in his clenched fists. "What do you mean by consequences?" His gaze pierced through the murmurs playing out around him, challenging the elder to unfold the layers of his warning. In that moment, Ethan was no longer the unsure man seeking everyone's approval. He was a seeker of clarity, desperate to confront the fabric of his family history. "It's not just about you, Ethan. It's about the legacy we carry. Our silence has been our shield," the elder replied, each word laced with a protective instinct that only reinforced Ethan's need for revelation. "Our tradition is built on a foundation of sacrifice and secrecy. Are you willing to dismantle that?" Ethan felt the heat rise in his chest. "I'm not here to dismantle anything. I'm here to build something new. Can't you see that? Silence may have shielded us, but it has also shackled us." The words escaped him with a fervor he hadn't anticipated. This was not merely an act of rebellion, it was a clarion call for the acceptance of truth. Everything had its cost, and the question was no longer if he would pay that price, but rather how much he was willing to gamble in pursuit of authenticity. Voices erupted around him, concerns layered with family loyalty, faded expectations clashing against the growing noise of Ethan's defiance. He recognized that this was not just a personal struggle, it was an awakening for his family too. Yet the myriad of feelings swirling around the room left him feeling like he was standing in the eye of a storm. Chaos on all sides, stillness within. "Maybe it's good to break the silence," Jalen interjected, his voice cutting through the turmoil like a beacon. "But it has to be done carefully. You want to grow, Ethan, but what if this conversation pulls apart threads that bind you?" Ethan glanced at Jalen, appreciating the caution in his words, but refusing to yield to it. This was no longer just about personal growth. It was about revealing buried truths and confronting the shadows of the family legacy head-on. Why should I tiptoe through this? If we are to connect on a meaningful level, then let it be rooted in authenticity. I want our conversations drenched in reality, not veiled in fiction. His declaration hung heavily in the air, silence swallowing the room momentarily as his family processed the weight of those articulated desires. Could they accept this new narrative he was proposing? Would they step forward, even if it meant stepping out of the safety of silence? The elder's expression softened, a flicker of understanding sparking into life. If you wish to unearth the past, you must be prepared to bear its burdens, he warned, almost gently this time. Our secrets are not merely whispers, they're the blueprints of who we are. Ethan's heart raced at the prospect of uncovering those secrets. What painful stories lay dormant, what truth awaited his discovery, not only about his family but about himself. Would this journey lead him toward reconciliation or deeper rifts? With his pulse pounding in his ears, Ethan knew this moment would determine his next steps in life. The consequences of honesty could either bind them together with strength or unravel the very fabric of who they had been. But the path forward was familiar and yet foreign. It beckoned him toward the uncharted territories of identity and truth. As the weight of the elder's warning echoes in his mind, a question burned in Ethan's heart. Was he truly ready to discover the hidden depths of his family's past, or would the truth prove too heavy to carry? The next revelation lay just beyond his reach, promising to reshape everything he thought he knew. Ethan stood on the brink of an emotional precipice, the elder's somber warning echoing in his mind. The silence in the room felt both suffocating and liberating, a paradox that rendered him conscious of the power every word he spoke would hold. He inhaled deeply, steadying himself against the tide of dread and anticipation. This was no longer just a family meeting. It was an awakening to a truth he could no longer ignore. Can we really move forward together, he thought? Must we cling to these shadows, or is it time to step into the light? The urgency of his convictions propelled him further into the heart of the conversation. Let's start peeling back the layers, then, he posed, his voice firm but inviting. What do we even know about our own history? How much of it is based on half-truths or complete fabrications? He scanned the faces of his family, searching for any signs of solidarity, but met only resistance draped in disbelief. One cousin, Darla, finally broke the silence. Ethan, you're asking for a seismic shift. What if these truths fracture us instead of binding us? What if they tear apart the very fabric we've relied on to keep us together? Her brow was furrowed, and Ethan could see that her fear stemmed from love, not malice. Beneath the weight of her words, he took a moment. This was not about him alone. It was a call that might reshape the uncertainty in all their lives. If we don't take this chance, we'll go on clinging to the very ghosts that haunt us, he replied softly. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about living authentically. As he spoke, he felt the stirrings of passion ignite within him, morphing into a powerful urge to reclaim not only his identity, but the integrity of his family's legacy. He recognized in that moment that the battle was not merely external. It was happening within himself as well. Who are we if we can't confront our reality? He pressed further, shifting his gaze from Darla to the elder, whose body language suggested an internal conflict mirroring Ethan's own. How can we honor our lineage if we bury it beneath layers of silence? There is strength in truth. Why can't we acknowledge that? The elder cleared his throat, a flicker of pride shimmering in his eyes. Perhaps you are right, Ethan, he said with quiet authority. Yet the path to truth can be perilous. If we're willing to uproot the foundations of our family, we must also brace ourselves for upheaval. Ethan felt a surge of determination course through him and met his elder's gaze with unwavering resolve. Then let's prepare for it together. If we don't step into this uncertainty, we'll continue to live in the shadow of what we might have been. Gradually, murmurs of agreement began to rise from the room, hesitant yet undeniable. It was a crack in the armor of discontent, a flicker of hope that perhaps the way forward was not as lonely as he had feared. Feeling buoyed by this fragile yet emerging consensus, Ethan sensed new possibilities surfacing. "Let's create a space where we can air our truths, unfiltered," he proposed, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "We can't rewrite our past, but we can own it, reclaim it. With each layer we unearth, we can reshape not only our legacy, but also each other." The energy shifted as his family began to engage with hesitancy yet curiosity. Their internalized fears began merging with the notion of collective healing, an alignment that had eluded them for far too long. As they deliberated the logistics of this shared exploration, Ethan's mind raced with the thrill of the endeavor. What truths would emerge? What skills or burdens from the past might he need to confront? Every question was laced with potential for growth and discovery. The dialogue progressed organically, yet Ethan's heart thrummed with anxiety. Besides the truths of their history, what other revelations did he harbor within himself, hidden like treasures waiting to be unearthed? The intensity of that thought consumed him. He might stand on the verge not only of understanding his family, but also of discovering dimensions of his identity he had yet to explore. As his family's voices began intermingle in a tapestry of potential healing, a singular question clawed to the forefront. Was he truly prepared to face whatever hidden parts of himself might be unveiled in this process? The next step in his journey loomed large, promising a blend of risks and revelations. Ethan felt the weight of his family's collective gaze as they discussed the logistics of their unprecedented undertaking. There was an air of vulnerability in the room that made him acutely aware of each heartbeat, as if they were all synchronizing to a shared ambition. The interim silence, punctuated only by the sound of hesitant breaths, swelled into a chorus of personal stakes and intertwined destinies. "First things first," he began, his voice cutting through the stillness with renewed authority. "We need to establish trust. These conversations will require us to be open and honest, without fear of judgment." He noted the apprehensive nods, the slight relaxation of shoulders. This meant something. It was a starting point. Darla shifted uncomfortably, her fingers curling and uncurling in her lap. "How do we ensure that what's shared here doesn't seep into our everyday lives?" she asked, the question laden with a protective urgency. "What if something is said that can't be taken back? What if it changes us irreparably?" "Change can be scary, but isn't it also empowering?" Ethan replied, feeling the surge of clarity bolstering his conviction. "What if by facing our issues, we actually grow stronger as a family? If we can't be honest with one another, where does that leave us?" The discussion morphed from apprehension to excitement, each family member contributing to the reshaping of their narrative. Ethan felt like an architect envisioning a new structure, one built not just on the foundation of fear and denial, but on courage and authenticity. As they laid the groundwork for their group sessions, the thrill of possibility pulsed inside him. He could feel the beginning of a transformation taking root within the core of his being. Each proposal brought forth a cascade of new ideas. His siblings began suggesting practical means to facilitate these discussions, potential locations, guidelines for dialogue, and even rules for emotional expression. With steady words and careful incentives, Ethan encouraged them to verbalize their emotions fully, embracing the uncomfortable path toward revelation. A sense of urgency bubbled beneath the surface, yet he felt the unsettling anxiety creeping in again, whispering doubts that threatened to overshadow the excitement. Could he really manage the complexity of emotions that would surface? Each family member was a vessel of experiences, grievances, and histories. Part of him feared that unveiling these truths might expose not only the dirt, but also the fractures beneath it. He recognized now that this wasn't merely about excavating their past. It was about daring to face the very things that had constrained him, the fears and insecurities shaped by family expectations and inherited legacies. His introspection felt like a double-edged sword, essential for growth, yet capable of cutting deeper than he anticipated. As the meeting drew to a close, an electric energy surged through the room. They had reached an agreement, albeit a tentative one, but it was a collective decision to confront their past. Yet a singular voice within him demanded more than a surface-level reckoning. What truths lay hidden, not merely within his family, but within himself? Like whispered secrets buried beneath the dust, there were parts of his identity he had long neglected in favor of accommodating feelings and expectations. Just before the final remarks were made, he posed the question that clawed at him once more. What if this journey leads us to discover something about ourselves that we never wanted to confront? Silence enveloped the room again, and it was as if the entire family was united in a moment of introspection. Each face reflected uncertainty, tinged with the excitement of the unknown. Ethan's mind whirred with questions that compelled his next move. What parts of his psyche had he kept hidden under layers of familial obligation? As he left the room, a sense of resolve took hold, anchoring him amidst the maelstrom of emotions and potential turmoil. He knew that each step towards this family truth would bring him closer to revealing his own. What he hadn't counted on was the imminent confrontation that awaited him, a long-buried family secret, one that would ultimately intertwine his fate with an unexpected foe. With every step toward understanding his family, he was also stepping into uncertainty, foreseeing shadows that threatened to shift into reality. The transformation began the moment Ethan stepped into the informal circle forming in the cozy corner of the living room 1 week later. There was a newfound energy slicing through the air, a fragile blend of anticipation and unease. Today, they would begin peeling back the layers, uncovering truths that had long been hidden beneath the surface. The collective weight of unspoken words hung thick, yet each member's resolve to confront the past cast a flicker of hope into the room. "Let's honor our commitment to honesty," Ethan said, summoning courage from the depths of his soul. "Today, we'll share our experiences and how our family's legacy has shaped us." He felt the room's tension shift. Anticipation, orange and electric, masked their fears. Darla gingerly nodded and began, "I've always felt as though I had to be the peacemaker, to keep things running smoothly for all of us. What I've internalized is this fear that if I ever voiced dissent, I'd unravel our family's fabric." Her eyes glimmered with vulnerability, and the revelation hit Ethan like a wave. He wasn't alone in his struggles. With each sibling and relative sharing their stories, Ethan felt layers of his own identity being stripped away, exposing facets of himself that had long been suffocated. He would soon realize the vast implications of those buried truths. As he listened, something shifted within him. Every shared experience began to weave together their familial tapestry in a new, vibrant way. Then, sensing that truth was bubbling beneath the surface, he interjected, "I want to share how our family history affected me. The expectations have often felt insurmountable, but embracing who I am means confronting both the burdens and the privileges entwined in our lineage." Jalen's supportive presence loomed nearby, fueling Ethan's conviction. He glanced at his friend, grateful for the unwavering support. This was no longer just about breaking barriers in a family gathering. It had transformed into a movement of authenticity. Then it happened. As the discussion progressed, the secrets began to erupt with an intensity Ethan hadn't anticipated. "Years ago, you were all aware of my struggles," said Ethan's Aunt Timmy, her voice laced with bitterness. But you never once questioned how our family name came with prejudice and expectations that suffocated individuality. The room fell silent. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability mingled with fear and shame, glancing off the walls that had long contained them. "We have to confront that part of our history," she continued, "the way we treated those who fell out of line with our family's expectations. It's not just about tradition, it's about respect and recognizing the dignity of others." As her words hung like a heavy veil, Ethan felt both tension and triumph surge through him. It was in this moment of brutal honesty that he understood the power of vulnerability. Every secret shared was a building block toward true connection. Slowly, voices of dissent softened into warmth and understanding as they etched the lines of their past into something they could all grasp. The conversation was not without conflict. Cousins argued against the need to alter their understanding. They clung to the safety of ingrained beliefs that threatened to fracture with every new admission. "We were raised to uphold these traditions. It made us who we are," one cousin shouted, his face flushed with rage. But in the face of resistance, the strength of authenticity bore down on them like a beacon. With each pushback, Ethan responded with tenderness, yet resolve. This cycle had been endemic throughout their shared experience, yet it needn't define their future. "Change can only sprout if we choose to water the seeds of our intentions," he implored, eyes scanning the room filled with mixed emotions. "Our progress is not about dismantling our roots. It's about nurturing them with truth." The fire ignited within him continued to build until he reached a pivotal point. He turned his compensatory energy inward and steeled his resolve. "I want each of you to know that rejecting silence does not mean abandoning our history. It means that we're reclaiming it, rewriting our narrative to ensure growth instead of stasis." As the dialogue continued to unfold, hesitation morphed into affirmation. Tears filled the eyes of those once rooted in denial, yet now blossoming into acceptance of their stories. By the end of the meeting, they had forged a pact not just with one another, but with their identities. A pact of disclosure, filled with accountability, empathy, and a future that beckoned brighter days, built on integrity. They embraced a newfound responsibility, one that shed light on generations gone and those yet to come. And finally, as the warmth of unity settled over them, Ethan took a step back from the discussion, feeling profoundly liberated. He had faced not only the truths lying dormant in his family, but uncovered pieces of himself that had long awaited his acknowledgement. This was beyond him. It was about the liberation found in sharing experiences, refusing to accept anything less. "This is merely the beginning of our journey together," Ethan affirmed, his heart swelling with conviction. "Moving forward, let's commit to continuous dialogue. Let's create a new legacy rooted not in silence, but in understanding." As they all linked hands, a wave of elation surged through him. They were stepping firmly out of the shadows and into a collective understanding that promised to cultivate reconciliation, empathy, and ultimately, growth. They had fought the battle against the chains of tradition, all while emerging stronger, more unified than ever. In that unequivocal moment of resolution, Ethan realized he didn't just redefine his relationship with his family. He had taken monumental steps towards self-acceptance, acknowledging the rich tapestry of his identity, shaped by both past struggles and newfound truths. Now, with clarity shimmering ahead, he looked not just to what had been overcome, but to what was yet to unfold, an open horizon marked by promise and profound personal fulfillment. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these powerful narratives alive. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. Your voice matters in this community. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's inspire true change together.